All right, I think we are live right now. So I'll just take a moment for everyone to join us. Good evening. It's Roger Kalia, Music Director of Symphony New Hampshire, and I'm speaking to you live from Nashua, New Hampshire. I'd like to welcome all of you to Granite State Conversations, which is a new series that I created with the purpose of interviewing musicians from the orchestra, guest artists, and cultural leaders of New Hampshire. So as I'm sure you understand, we have had to do live stream concerts our entire season due to the pandemic. And we've live streamed 2 concerts thus far this season. And our next live stream concert will take place this Sunday, February 21st at 3 p.m. We will be performing Sarah Kirkland Snider's orchestral song cycle, Penelope. And all of the details about that live stream can be found on our website at www.symphonynh.org. Before I introduce our special guest tonight, please feel free to leave comments and questions throughout the conversation. During the end of our conversation, we would both love to answer any questions that you may have about the live stream, the work itself, or our musical backgrounds and careers. We want to hear from you, and don't hesitate right now to leave a comment about where you are watching from. It'd be great to hear from you. I'm really excited to be collaborating this weekend with the amazing singer Karine Byrne, who will be the featured soloist on Sarah Kirkland Snider's Penelope. I met Karine in August 2019 at the Lake George Music Festival. And as a singer, Karine's performed all over the world. She's performed with orchestras and at festivals such as the Luzerne Festival Academy Orchestra, the Boston Early Music Festival, Plymouth Philharmonic Orchestra, the Madison Bach Musicians, Amherst Symphony, and she performs a variety of music, including opera, early music, jazz, and contemporary music. I mean, she really does it all. She is currently on the faculty and serves as the chair of vocal studies at the Longy School of Music in Boston. Since we on this side can't hear you applaud, please do me a special favor. Use the comment screen on the bottom and click on the clapping emojis or say hello, bravo, anything to make our special guest feel welcome tonight. So without further ado, please welcome Karine Byrne. Hey, Karine, how are you?
Hi, Roger. Great to see you. And thank you for that warm, very, very sweet introduction.
Well, it's all true, and it's so great to have you here. And it looks like we have a few people tuned in right now. I just want to say Barb Young is watching. She's one of our wonderful Board of Trustee members watching in Nashua. Christine, of course, is watching in Bloomington. You know Christine. And it's so great to have you here. How have you been doing?
I've been actually doing great. COVID great is what I've been saying, because it's like everybody is kind of in the same boat, struggling with the changes of 2020 and the life events surrounding this weird year. But, I'm trying to basically focus on the positives and see some of the good things that have come out of this strange shift in how we work and how we look at our music careers. So I've been doing okay. I've been really lucky to have the position at Longy. I've been pouring myself into my students and my work there, since it's that's most of what I'm doing right now, with kind of most gigs, except for Penelope this weekend, woohoo! But most things being on hold. So really focusing on my teaching and the department, doing a lot of reading, cooking, and spending time with my husband, Andy, who, before this all happened, we were on the road a lot, and we were kind of ships in the night often. So just spending more time with family. So.
Well, it's great. And you're not too far from New Hampshire. I mean, you're in Boston right now, or you live close to Boston. And that's also really nice. It's just a drive up the road really for you this weekend to perform with the orchestra, which is great. You're right here. Mm-hmm. And yeah, of course, I said we met in August 2019 at the Lake George Music Festival, of course. And I, of course, know your husband well, as he was a performer at the festival as a trumpet player. Mm-hmm. But it's so great to see you again and to be able to make music this coming weekend, because that seems like ages ago when we were at the festival.
I know.
It really does.
Yeah, and looking at having been working on this piece in the past few weeks, it's just been bringing back all these amazing memories from Lake George. It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, tell me about your background in music. I mean, how did you become interested in music? Was there a turning point? What does that all look like?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because things have kind of come full circle. So I'm from the Boston area originally, from south of Boston, and I went to UMass Amherst to study music. And at that point, I had never taken a voice lesson. I had never taken any sort of formal lessons in classical music. So I have a musical family. So my dad is a jazz guitarist. And so he did teach us, all the kids, I'm one of 6 kids. Wow. We all are musical and have been brought up in an environment of music. So that was just part of our family. It wasn't like this extra thing we kind of did on the side. It was just kind of, ingrained in the culture of our family. So I grew up singing. Again, like I said, I never had taken a classical voice lesson, but I sang a lot of jazz and musical theater, mostly in school. And then for fun, I would write my own music, and I sang some pop and things like that. And I loved choral music too. So I always did choral festivals in high school. But when it came to auditioning for music programs, I actually didn't really know what I was doing at the time. So I was learning, I was, going to the local library and taking out CDs to try to figure out, like, what's an aria? What's something I can sing? And I auditioned with a Handel aria that I basically learned by ear for my undergraduate auditions. And I got into UMass Amherst. I studied with Jana Beatty and Amy Johnson. And I mean, they, changed my life because I discovered I could do more than just sing the type of music I was singing. And so I started to really love opera at that point. And then I went, after my undergraduate at UMass, I went to Manhattan School of Music for my master's and really hyper-focused on opera, and started a chamber music, new music group, and also started kind of branching out into early music at that point too. So I spent 10 years in New York, and that's where my career was sort of built in terms of like my singing and my teaching, and those two things going together. And now I find myself after 10 years back in Boston, and it's just been a journey. Yeah.
No, I think that's fantastic. And we all have our unique journeys. And I think it's just so great that you were able to, and you still do, that you explore a variety of styles. You sing opera, you do musical theater, but you have such a strong understanding of contemporary music, and you don't always see that. And I really admire that about you as a musician. It's so great to hear that different virtuosity and different unique styles. So that's really great. And actually, speaking of styles of singing, you shared with me 2 fantastic videos that I think our audiences need to hear. Do you want to tell us about the first video? It's the Handel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is an album that I have been working on with Polyphemus Music, which is a collaboration with Dylan Sauerwald, who's the artistic director, and he's also playing harpsichord in the recording. And we've been working on this album of Handel cantatas that he wrote when he was very young, in the house of Ruspoli, and they're very dramatic and kind of underperformed cantatas. Yeah. And this is just one of the arias from one of the cantatas, Zeffiretti de Venite. And we are finally finished recording the whole album, so we're in the editing and final stages now, which is actually great. It's been a great project to do during COVID because you can do a lot with recording. And
absolutely, let me make it full screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let's see. Is it clear? There it is. Okay. So let's take a listen. Here we go. Beautiful. You know, StreamYard doesn't do that performance justice, but it sounds absolutely awesome. It sounds beautiful. Bravo.
Thank you.
How many times have you sung Messiah? I'm curious.
You know, it's really funny. You'd think that I'd sung it more, but I've only done it twice. No, so I've done it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's strange because a lot of my friends are doing it like 10, 20 times a year. And it's just never, I don't know. It's my first solo Messiah was 2017. I did it as a choral member of Arcadia Players when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I've sung many movements of it in different contexts, but the whole piece together, only those 3 times. And then I sang it this past season as a virtual sing-along. So the 4 soloists were in person with an organist, and then the choruses sang along from home.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, we have a comment here, beautifully, powerfully.
Oh my goodness,
powerful.
thank you.
Yeah, Cyrus Williams, he's a wonderful board member at the Evansville Philharmonic. Hey, Cyrus, thanks for tuning in. And we have some other people watching from Dave Young, who's a wonderful supporter of the symphony. Greetings from another New Hampshire fan. Thanks for tuning in,
Hi,
David.
David.
You. And, well, we also have another video of you performing something completely different in a completely different style.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what we're going to watch.
Yeah, definitely. So I chose these 2 videos because they could not be more different. So we one of the things that I do in addition to singing as a soloist is I sing with my husband in a duo called Byrne Kozar Duo, and my husband's a trumpet player, and so we commit most of what we do is commission new works to be written for trumpet and voice. Sometimes there's electronics and piano in the mix, but most of our pieces are just trumpet and voice and exploring what those 2 timbres can do together. And so this is one of the first pieces written for us. Maybe one of the first, I think, one of the maybe first 5 pieces written for us by Reiko Futing, who's a composition faculty at Manhattan School of Music. And we are in love with this piece. It was really, really hard to put together and to get it to really gel. And then, once it did, it just feels like magic.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm going to jump around a little bit too, because I know there's a clip later in the piece, but let's start at the beginning of this work. Wow. Perfectly in tune, Karine.
Yeah, well, there are, some other takes probably.
And I noticed you were, it looked like you were conducting while you were singing there.
Yeah, and I'm not a conductor, but because we're married, he understands what I mean when I do. And there is just certain things that need either. Sometimes he conducts too, just with his trumpet, because we just, that piece is full of such complicated rhythms that we just kind of need to have somebody.
Yeah, we have a
cueing.
We have a wow. Definitely, I agree. And we have from Barbie Young, we have a thumbs up. Yeah, it really is virtuosic in its own way, and I can't imagine rehearsing it, because I know there's so much that goes into a work like that, rhythmically, pitch-wise. It's a different type of mentality from perhaps doing a Baroque piece of music, which has a tradition. There's a tradition. You find a recording. There aren't many recordings that exist of Reiko's work. And I mean, there's not a sound tradition. I mean, it's you bringing the work to life, which is so fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. I love being part of the first group of musicians to do a work is an exciting thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
yeah.
I mean, speaking of contemporary repertoire and new music, I can't wait for our performance this coming Sunday of Sarah Kirkland Snider's Penelope. I want to let everyone know that we performed this work. Karine and I performed this work at the Lake George Music Festival in 2019, and I actually want to share a quick photo from that performance, if I can find it on here. Here it is.
I'm excited to see it too.
Yeah. Let me make it full screen.
Oh yeah.
This was taken from the audience, and this is it's a work that really is, well, as you can see, Karine's singing. It features a solo vocalist with a very small chamber orchestra that includes actually electric guitar, electronics played on a laptop, and a drum set. So you have your typical orchestral instruments. You can see here there's string players. There are only 3 string players, a violinist, a violist, and a cellist. And then in the back of the orchestra, we have a few traditional, I guess you could call them, orchestral wind instruments. We have the flute, there's an alto flute, there is a clarinet and bass clarinet, trumpet, which actually your husband Andy performed so beautifully in 2019. Bravo, Andy. And we also have a French horn there. So it's a great work that combines tradition with new sounds. And to me, it's very accessible. I just want to ask you, this work by Sarah Kirkland Snider, first off, she calls it an orchestral song cycle or a song cycle. And song cycles go all the way back to, if you think about it, to Schumann and Mahler. What is it about this song cycle in particular that you enjoy so much? Because I know when I asked you to perform this, I think you really jumped at this opportunity. So I guess what I'm asking is, what is so special about this piece to you, especially as a song cycle?
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's more than just a piece. It's like an experience. And I do really love the opportunity to do things that are a little off the beaten path and a little bit different. And I actually was aware of Shara Worden, who is now Shara Nova, who the piece was written for, and Sarah's work as well. And so being giant fans of them already, being asked to sing this piece was just sort of like, really, am I worthy? And I think it's really special in the sense that it mixes classical and popular genres in a way that's very that's genuine. It's not like trying to play to a younger audience or something. I think it's really genuine the way this music is presented. It is exactly what it should be. It's just a really beautiful mix of styles that works really well together, and it feels great to sing. It feels great to sing because it's like you kind of, we can talk about this more later about like the sort of musical aspect of it, but you kind of just sink into the piece, and I feel like I have to blend in and support the chamber ensemble more so than just stand out and be the big soloist, because it's really not about that. It's very much about the words and the text and really about the music itself. It's really not about me, and I think I love that aspect of it. And I think it's special too that there's a story, but it's not all that clear all the time. Like it's very much like vignettes of experiences, and like there's this sort of theme of basically this veteran. It's like this modern meets old. So there's this like man who is suffering from brain damage after some war, which there's no names really, like except for from the Odyssey. There's no characters really mentioned from the modern story, so you're just getting these little pictures from it, but basically he doesn't know who he is anymore. He's been lost for 20 years, and he like arrives home to his wife, and they wait for him to figure out who he is and to have his memory come back, and she reads him the Odyssey to help him return to himself.
Yes.
And it's really powerful, these moments, because sometimes you also can't tell whether the story in a movement is about the Odyssey or if it's about the modern story, because they really reflect each other. And this sort of like theme of home and coming home and finding yourself, and like the loneliness that Penelope feels in the Odyssey is very similar to the loneliness that the character, the wife, the modern character is feeling. So these complicated emotions of like waiting, but there's still this hope, but it's not without experiencing all the sort of like despair and darkness that comes before. So it's just a lot.
It is a lot. And if you're expecting some sort of super exciting, rhythmic, upbeat piece, this isn't it, but it's absolutely breathtaking in terms of the beautiful melodies. And there's a simplicity to the work also. There's 4-bar phrases. It's not these odd meters. Sure, there's a little bit of that, but it's very, like you mentioned, there's this beautiful balance between pop music and classical music. And I always say that it's almost a mix of art song meets indie rock. Meets chamber folk music. I always think like Radiohead meets Bjork meets Arvo Pärt maybe. It has that kind of sound world to it. And you're right about what it's about. I agree completely with the message of the story is about, as you mentioned, hope, compassion and empathy, healing, relationships. And that's exactly it's kind of nice. That's what we need right now in this world. And that really, the music beautifully reflects that. So, no, that's beautiful what you were saying. And I would love to share a brief video actually of Sarah Kirkland Snider explaining the story behind the work in a bit more detail from her point of view. So let's share that. Let me see. Sarah is, and I should have mentioned this earlier, Sarah is really one of the most important 20th century composers out there. She lives in New York. She actually recently had a work performed by the New York Philharmonic. Actually, it was delayed due to COVID, but she really is an unbelievable composer of great emotion. So anyway, here it is. Should all be able to see that full screen.
Penelope, the song cycle, explores themes of war, trauma, and homecoming, but it's ultimately a story about relationships, compassion, and healing. The cycle chronicles a time in the lives of two anonymous characters that was full of longing and remembrance. So as a composer, I sought to create what was essentially a musical diary of those emotions and experiences.
To see where he might have gone,
Originally, the music of Penelope was created as a multimedia theater piece for playwright and actor Ellen McLaughlin. Sarah later reworked the music to be performed as an independent orchestral song cycle for the Signal Ensemble and a female vocalist.
Without I was asked by the people at the Getty Villa, who have a theater company, if I would write something, preferably a one-woman piece that was involved in some way with the Greeks. And I had been thinking for some time about doing something with the Odyssey. And part of my interest in the Odyssey is that it's always felt for me like an intensely female book. I think the Greeks were very clear about what war does to people, and I'm interested in the relationship of veterans to the strains and difficulties of returning from the battlefront, which I think is what the Odyssey is about.
That was interesting. I thought just a different perspective from, Sarah, Ellen, and Shara Worden, because you get completely 3 different viewpoints that all pretty much relate about how powerful this work is and how deep and emotional it is.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear from Ellen too, as she's the librettist, right?
Yeah, she's the librettist, and like she said, it was originally written for alto doubling as an actor and string quartet. And then, of course, they reached out to Sarah Kirkland Snider a year later and made it, I should say Sarah and Ellen worked together on the string quartet, but then Sarah made it a orchestral song cycle a year later that was independent from the acting component. So what's really cool is, and what I think is great is there are 2 versions, and I know you know this, but for our audience, there are actually 2 versions of this work. One is for chamber orchestra, and one is for large ensemble of 12 musicians, and that's the one we're going to be performing on Sunday. And the chamber orchestra version is more of just strings and electronics, and of course the solo vocal part, whereas the large chamber version brings in more orchestral instruments, which is, again, the one we're going to be doing on Sunday. So, Karine, as a singer, how do you prepare? How do you prepare a work such as this? Is it similar to how you may prepare, I don't know, a Handel aria or a Puccini opera? And then what are the technical and musical challenges for you as a performer?
Absolutely. So I definitely prepared it the same way I would have prepared anything. So, I got my score and I highlighted my, meter changes and dynamic markings and tempo changes and all that. So I tried to learn it without listening to the recording, just to make sure I understood how all the rhythmic material worked and how all the melodies, how they work together. And then I did listen to I listened a lot actually to the recordings, because it just gets you into the world, the sound world. And it was, I would say, putting it together musically, because I'm somebody who really loves singing pop and indie, and I used to be a singer-songwriter, and it just kind of felt natural. So it was easy in that way. Right. But also, as somebody who is a classical singer, I think the technical challenges are kind of getting to a point where you can completely let go of the classical side of yourself in terms of the technique, and sort of, realizing that, not that you're not singing with technique, but that there's a different way of understanding text and emotion with a piece like this, especially you're on a mic too. So that changes things. And of course, you're also preparing it without the mic, really. Unless you have one at your house or something. You have to sort of prepare it, understanding that you're going to be on mic for the first rehearsal, and then kind of being prepared for what that change will be, because it's a different way of understanding text and emotion, and a different way of perceiving what vocal beauty is too, I think. So like I said before, it's, you back away from being a soloist and you kind of just put the story first and put the text first. And of course, you're trying to give the right tone, color, and quality, but without, being too much, without drawing away. You don't want to draw away from the point of the whole thing. Right. So once you kind of, once I to completely embrace that, And I think it happened in that first rehearsal with the ensemble and you and Gaylord doing the electronics, and just you get to a point where you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna flow with this and just and it kind of sings itself, really.
It does. And when you're singing, it sounds almost improvised in terms of how free it is, but every rhythm is written out.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that it's actually all, I have my score right here as well, and you'll see every rhythm is specifically written out, and just like you, I highlight my time signatures. And I'll mention also, as a conductor, for me, it's a bit of a challenge because there is an electronics element, like you mentioned, that electronics element, and it has to line up exactly in the right spot. So I have to wear a click track, an earpiece, and what happens is there's someone playing a laptop computer that initiates or turns on the electronics. And what happens is through this earpiece, there's a click track, and it's essentially a metronome or a beat that keeps going throughout certain parts of the piece that I have to stick with, or else the electronics don't really line up. And that's a real challenge because we're performers. We're used to making our own music and not being rigid in our approach to a click track. And unfortunately, and I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's just part of the process, because even in those electronic tracks, there are vocal backings that actually need to, line up, and it's almost like a call and response. You sing and that answers. So that's a big challenge in putting this piece together. And that requires a lot of rehearsal time,
Yeah, definitely. I think anytime you mix acoustic and electronic instruments, it poses like immediate challenges, but it's also really rewarding because like acoustic instruments can create a certain amount of colors, and electronics can create a certain amount. And then when you put them together, it's a whole new sound world. And it's, even though it feels to us as performers, and I've experienced this too with other pieces that I've had to do with click, and I haven't had that many pieces. Like Andy, for example, has done many more pieces with click track than I have, but it does feel very rigid. And then when you listen to the final product, it doesn't sound that way, So it's interesting.
That's true. And, a lot of musicians are used to click, like you said. I know Andy's done a lot with click, but also in the LA studios, all those movie recordings. Whenever we play a movie score, all of the orchestral musicians are at times on click. It's not just the conductor, but it's everyone. But it does take some getting used to. And I know it took me getting used to when we performed it the first time. We had it was so funny to sometimes give a thumbs up, meaning turn on the click. There's all these little hidden signals that people don't realize that we're doing.
Yeah, I think for you, it's probably the most challenging because, you're the one kind of leading the band there. So
and it's one of those pieces that at times you just want to let it expand in terms of the tempo, and you can't because of that, again, that electronic element. But I should mention, the majority of the piece, the electronics are somewhat free flowing, and they just happen at the top of movements or at the end of the movements. And for example, some of the electronic sounds that you hear are these hints of war, battles. And then there's also these just beautiful textures that come out of nowhere that are just really relaxing.
Sort of support the instruments. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. And I always say it's this piece, when she wrote the piece, it almost sounds like she had a studio session in mind, like a studio recording session in mind, rather than just a live performance. And it's really interesting in that respect. But, you were mentioning the idea of just kind of letting go. There's a movement I want to just play, and I was wondering if maybe you could just, before I show the clip, briefly talk about maybe like what you enjoy about it and what are some of the challenges. It's the Lotus Eaters, which actually is the most popular movement according to a lot of different critics who have heard the piece. It won numerous awards. Actually, I should mention this. Huffington Post wrote that the Lotus Eaters was in the top 10 alternative art songs of the decade. I couldn't believe this. And then supposedly in 2018, NPR listed the Lotus Eaters among the 200 greatest songs written by 21st century women. So I think it's
That's
really
awesome. I agree with that. That's for sure. It's an amazing song, and it took me a long time to sort of figure out where it fit like thematically with the piece, because it does kind of, I think that this song is one of the ones that kind of can stand alone too, whereas like similar to what a song cycle implies, like all the pieces they're the most effective when they're with each other and in a certain order, but this is the one that can kind of be extracted as its own song. But in terms of the context of the whole piece, I was like, I wonder, for me, getting into the story of it, I felt like, okay, maybe this is where she's opening the Odyssey for the first time and reading, because it kind of feels like she's talking about the different suitors trying to sway Penelope to them while her husband's gone. But oh my gosh, the music is amazing. And there's this one moment that I just have like all this color in my score, where everything builds up, that never that moment. Oh, just every time we would do that, I would just like, my whole body just chills.
The lyrics are exactly.
And the ensemble just kind of like, it just
never will I sleep like that again. And I'm lost in this night. I'm already lost, but not as lost as them. That's but I think you're right. You're right. There's a sense of nostalgia, but there's also a sense of hope. And
and that kind of runs throughout the whole piece.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to play a little of that. Let me pull that up. Let's see. Here it is. So I should mention, this is actually a music video. It's not a performance. It's a music video that was released by, I believe, New Amsterdam Records, which is the company or the recording group that Sarah works with. And they released a music video specifically for this movement, the Lotus Eaters, which is taken from Penelope. So I'm going to start at the the beginning part, and enjoy. This is actually the part where, where the never, never, as you were talking about, Karine.
Now I'm smelling the night air, crunching gravel as I walk. Never, 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 never will I sleep like that again. Never, 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 never will I sleep like that. Sleep like that.
The video, it really, I think, is trying to reflect the lyrics, of course. And I wonder if that was part of the play, that sort of scenario, that sort of setting when they were, for the original production, but before the song cycle. But it's that's Shara Worden who's singing that performance, and she sung the premiere. But I think you're right. It's that never, never section where the colors from the violas and the strings come in. It's absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, and it's amazing live too. I feel like, this, like you said, this piece works so well for recording studio, and it's beautiful, and that you could listen to it just like in the same way you'd listen to your favorite, like Sufjan Stevens album or Bjork album, but there are some moments that live are really special, and that was one where I was like, that's different from the recording, where everyone's swelling together, and it was I'm excited for that.
And it's absolutely stunning live. It really is. And yeah, I mean, we have some comments here. Wow, Barbie Young, yeah. And actually, we had a question earlier. I noticed David Young asked, looking forward to the concert on Sunday, Karine. Roger has turned Barbie Young and I onto some jazz and contemporary music. Ask him about Above and Beyond. Great band. I'm wondering if you, and we could get to this. Yeah, I think this is a good question. I'm wondering if you have any contemporary jazz vocalists on your must-listen list. Good question, David.
That's a great question. Contemporary jazz vocalists.
Tricky.
Okay, so the first person that actually came to mind, and I don't even know if you'd necessarily put him into that category, but it's Jacob Collier. I don't know if you've heard. I mean, I could just listen to him.
Jacob's awesome.
All day.
He's a virtuoso. He's like a modern Mozart. Yeah.
Unbelievable kind of stuff. I mean, and it's not just jazz, but it's sort of fusion. It's everything. But his sense of improvisation and what he can do with layers, and just, he does not need anything but himself. I mean, he's like the perfect COVID musician, because he's kind of able to just, edit everything together. And yeah, I mean, musically. So I think he spelled his last name Collier. Yeah, that's the first person that comes to mind. Yeah.
Right now. Yeah, no, it's a great answer. We've seen him live a couple of times. Wow, Barb, you have to tell me about that. That's amazing. I didn't realize that. Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, very cool. I was going to say that the recording we just watched of the Lotus Eaters, that's on YouTube. You could search Penelope, the Lotus Eaters. You'll find it there if you're interested. And I should mention, this album, this piece is available on Spotify. It's available on, any streaming music service. But you're going to want to hear it on Sunday, because I promise you, Karine is just an amazing talent, and the orchestra is really looking forward to collaborating with Karine. We actually collaborated last year. It wasn't on a concert per se, but it was our fanfare gala. And I wanted to talk about that just a little bit, because we had such a blast. It was like a party.
It was so fun. Oh my gosh.
We were doing Roaring Twenties works by Gershwin and maybe Cole Porter, I think it was. It was just such a blast. And do you have any fun? What memories of that experience do you have?
I have such great memories from that. And it was also right before the pandemic. So it was one of the last performances I did. I think I did like one other performance, and that was one of the last ones. So exactly. It was almost exactly a year ago. And it was, a big party. So tons of people in the room, and live music and drinks and dinner and the auction and the cake. And like, it was just like extravagant. And it was a really cool. Oh my gosh, it was a blast. And it was also a cool way to actually get to know Symphony New Hampshire, because if I had done a more traditional concert with you guys, it wouldn't have been like that. But I got to like sit at the table with some of the board members and you and Christine, and so it was like actually really, and then hearing people talk about the orchestra too, and some of the mission and some of the events and stuff. It was a really, really cool way to get to know the orchestra, just from a different perspective than a typical concert. And also we got to sing that really fun music. So I think we did like All That Jazz, and I think we did The Funny Girl, Don't Rain on My Parade. And we did all these really fun pieces and dressed to the nines in the 20s outfit. It was just a blast.
Yeah, we were decked out in our 20s garb. I mean, let's be honest, that was so much fun. I wish I could have pulled up that picture. There's a great photo that popped up on Facebook Memories the other day, where we were we took a photo all dressed out and decked out in our 20s garb. That was wonderful. And such great memories. Absolutely. Now, I tell you, New Hampshire and the Symphony, they know how to put on a good party, and they really know, we as an audience base here in New Hampshire, I feel that a lot of listeners are open to new things. And it's taken some time perhaps, but they are open to jazz. They're open to movie music, contemporary music like Sarah Kirkland Snider's Penelope, which I think will really be on everyone's wish list after listening to that work. Yeah. And of course the classics. And that's why I love this part of the country. New England in particular. I mean, you grew up here, Karine, you know just how special it is. And as a native New Yorker, we just have so many opportunities to really bring the orchestra, not only having them perform throughout New England, but also, one day I'd love to do a tour with this orchestra, because they're so good, the musicians, in terms of the way they're able to play a variety of musical styles. And that to me really speaks volumes. And yeah, I was going to say, we were even supposed to have you scheduled for a classics concert this year, which will be postponed to next year, hopefully, and we'll be able to do that again. But this concert coming up, I can't wait. And if anyone has any questions for Karine or myself, just feel free to leave them in the chat box right now. I'll pull it up. But again, thank you for joining me today. And I want to mention just briefly, in terms of COVID, we're going to be distanced. So it's going to be different. I'll have a mask on. I believe Karine will have a mask on. It's going to be different. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to bring this great piece to life. And, we really need it most.
I think most musicians during this time have been more willing to perform with slight modifications than to not perform at all. So, it's great. I mean, I have my vocal mask that's specifically designed for singers, and I mean, is it the most comfortable thing ever? No. And is it can you see all the emotions that you could normally see? No, but it's still important to be performing right now. And I'm so honored to be asked to be part of something during this time. It's really, really special. And the fact that, groups like Symphony New Hampshire are finding ways to do it safely is exactly what we should be doing as we sort of slowly go back to normal, very slowly. Who knows when it'll really feel normal again. But I mean, to just dive in and do it is great.
It is. And we're one of the few orchestras in this country that hasn't postponed their season or canceled their season, but is actually performing with protocols in place, safety requirements. And I know that for this concert, some of our musicians will be performing for the very first time since March. And that is so extremely special to all of us. And again, as Renee says, I love saying, is it ideal? No, but none of this is ideal. And at the same time, I think we're able to make the most of this opportunity, and we will, because we have a great team, and this is a great piece of music that deserves to be heard. So I think it'll really bring comfort to many people. And I can't wait to see you Friday night. It's our first rehearsal, and then Sunday we have the performance. So just real quickly, I wanted to mention www.symphonynh.org. You can find all of the details there. Karine also has a personal website if you want to check out what she's been doing and see other recordings. I believe is it KarineByrne.com?
Yeah, it's as simple as that.
Okay. And yeah, definitely check out her amazing recordings, because she has a number of recordings on YouTube, and it's just fantastic. So Karine, thank you for joining me tonight. What a treat this was.
This was so much fun. Thank you for having me, and I cannot wait. I'm counting down until Friday and then Sunday. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait.
Me too. See you soon. Be safe, and see you in a few days. Thank you everyone for joining.
See you soon. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.